Thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And here's your host, Kris McGuigan.
Well, once again, it's time for the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Kris McGuigan, and I want to thank you for joining us. And today, I think we got a great show. I think I say that every week, and it's because we have a great show every week. But one of the things that we really have to start thinking about is we hear it all the time. I mean, as a speaker, people will always say to me, why don't you go ahead and send me your resume? Or, people that want to engage with me, they want to go ahead and see my experience, or they want to see my resume. And it seems that this blueprint, it seems that this framework, it seems that this document is what really kind of gets you into the door. Now, it gets you in the door, but then your personality keeps you in the room. So what is it that goes into developing the perfect resume? What is it that you really need to have on this resume that'll make you stand out, that'll make you jump off the page? Well, I have to tell you today, I am bringing you an expert who is going to talk to us about making sure that we have the best piece of paper possible as we start to share that with our peers. So our guest today is Kris McGuigan. She is Cleveland's top resume writer, and she's a trusted career advisor. She recently earned her prestigious ACRW designation, making her only one of 4 Academy-certified resume writers in the world, and she also holds an MBA. She is also part of the Forbes Coaches Council, and I have to tell you, I am very excited to have you here, Kris. I want to thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Now, I got to tell you, I think you have one of the most toughest jobs. As a consultant, as a career advisor, it's your job now to make me look like I know what I'm talking about, to kind of get me those things, get me in that door, as I mentioned. So, if we kind of start off, and I think the first question that I ask you is, how did you get involved in this, and how did you make this kind of the cornerstone of your business?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I actually think I have one of the best jobs, while it may be difficult at times. So, Kris, I followed my own corporate career, sort of climbing the ladder through healthcare administration, and had spent a little bit of time in nonprofit, had worked for some different organizations, well-known organizations. And at some point, I sort of stopped and looked back and said, what was it really that I loved the most about all of these different jobs? And realized it wasn't the jobs themselves, it was the path I took to get there. And discovered that my true passion was really around helping other people identify that potential and then unleash it. And so now that's what I spend my days doing, sort of helping individuals, as you mentioned, market themselves and really figure out the best possible way to represent all the value that they bring to the marketplace.
And one of the things we're going to talk about today, Kris, is we're really going to kind of get to the soup and nuts of, what needs to be on your resume. And maybe we'll ask you the top 3 or the top 5 things that we should have on our resume. But before we get there, so when we talk about the importance of, working with somebody, such as yourself in developing this resume brand, how important is that really to get us through the gatekeepers in the organizations we're trying to get to?
So actually, research shows that working with a professional writer can make you 40% more likely to get noticed by either a recruiter or a hiring agent. These days, our resumes are so much more than just a chronological listing of the things that we've been through, Kris. Now it's a marketing document. So in the same way that I would go to a graphic designer or to a marketing specialist in order to have a poster created or something to advertise my business on a side street, I'm certainly going to make sure that I'm going to a professional to understand how to market myself inside of this job world that we're all scattered throughout. So working with a professional writer can ensure that you have the most updated information, that you understand modern resume practices, and that you're staying alert of all of the different electronic pieces as well, such as the applicant tracking software, how LinkedIn is working, what algorithms these systems are using, because there's a much bigger science to all of it, given the amount of people we have coming through this digital space to try to apply to a single position.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. And, one of the things that I was thinking as you were talking was, I probably need to update my resume now, but it made me think that, we'll talk about that offline, but, it made me think, Kris, that it seems that people are only updating their resume when they're looking for another position. Is it something that you should do pretty regularly? With the clients that you have, do you recommend that they should update their resume every so often, or how does that work?
Absolutely. So the best thing that you can do is dig your well before you're thirsty. In the same way, we want all professionals to be actively networking and make sure they're cultivating new relationships, because you never know what you don't know yet, and you never know who you might meet. That same issue applies to your resume. you want to make sure that you have an updated brand and that you're ready for any unforeseen circumstances, whether that is a change in the market and you suddenly find yourself out of work, or potentially your boss comes around the corner letting you know about a big promotion that they're interested in taking you for, but they're going to need to see a resume before you can move forward. You don't want to be in that, midnight time-driven, I have to put something together right away and I haven't looked at this document in the last 10 years situation. It is much better and certainly serves your career to have an ongoing updated document that you can use and are proud of and properly reflects your current brand at any time. So even for individuals that I create a new resume for and we revamp their brand, I come back to them on an annual basis and let them know that, just as a reminder, that they'll want to include any recent accomplishments and be sure to refresh that brand, again, about every 12 months at a minimum.
That's really good advice. One of the things that I was talking to a peer, and they're the CEO of a big organization, and we were talking about, I mentioned that we were going to have a discussion about resumes, and, I was trying to get a little background from them on what they look for and so on and so forth. And I was at a little disagreement with them, and I want to get your opinion on it as the expert here. So he was saying that, for me, let's talk about me personally. I started off my career as a paramedic. I had the crux of my career in the healthcare industry. I'm able to do process improvement and organizational, development, leadership development. I'm a motivational speaker. And he said, for somebody like you, I would expect that you'd have 3 separate resumes. And I was like, well, how can you say that? I mean, I'm who I am, and I'm going to go ahead and give you my, my paper, and it's going to outline kind of who I am in a snapshot to see if you want to talk to me some more. And he said that a lot of people at that level are really looking for specifics as to the job that you're applying for. I disagreed with him, and I'm hoping that you're going to tell me I'm right.
I'm going to tell you you're right, but I do agree with him that there needs to be position-specific language. So here's my take on this, Kris, and it's definitely a controversial issue. I believe that individuals should have a single resume. There are very, very few outlying circumstances. For example, you're going for a dream job, but you also want to be realistic and pay the bills, and you're out of work, so you have to have something that's a little bit closer to home. And you have a resume that you only associate with those dream jobs, and then you have what you're using on a day-to-day search. But I think for the average job seeker, for most professionals, when you have more than one resume, even if people who are receiving this feedback that you should be updating your resume for each and every position to make sure it's got all of the exact content from the job description, keywords, etc., I believe that creates schizophrenic job seekers. So your job search has to be clearly focused, and you have to have an idea of the direction you are trying to go in, and then market yourself appropriately across all platforms. And there needs to be alignment. If you apply to a position as a paramedic with me, and then I go to your LinkedIn profile and find out you're a motivational speaker, I'm confused. I want to understand, are you in leadership development or are you a paramedic? Which one is it going to be? And so when individuals are changing their resume for every single job they apply to, quickly you can become very disorganized and not be really sure who you want to be in any given situation. So not only when a hiring agent calls you and said, we've seen your resume, we want to chat, we're really interested, you're sort of racking your brain to figure out which version you even sent to this particular organization. But again, as I mentioned, it creates a problem with LinkedIn, because while you may be able to create 3 or 4 different resumes to send directly to an individual, you can only be one person on LinkedIn. So job seekers, professionals at large, are much better served by spending some time up front to get really clear about what they'd like to do and the direction they'd like to take their career in. And then after establishing that target, move forward into the branding process so that they have the resume, the executive bio, the LinkedIn profile that's going to take them down that path.
So all the things you're saying, I think, make perfect sense, and I'm glad we were able to kind of put that into a nutshell. So I guess let's get into the meat and potatoes then of a good resume. So, we hear so many things, Kris. I mean, it should be short, it should be no more than 2 pages, it should be. So what does the perfect resume look like? I mean, what's the right length of a perfect resume?
So the correct length, by and large, I would say you should not go over 2 pages. There are some extenuating circumstances. For example, if you're in academia or perhaps certain elements of healthcare, they're still looking for a CV. And in that case, you can justify 3 or 4 pages. But again, for your typical professional, if you've had more than 10 years of experience or you've had robust experience in a short amount of time early in your career, you can definitely justify those 2 pages. If you're less than 10 years, you can take it to the 1. But going beyond 2 pages, again, as I mentioned, your resume is a marketing tool. And in order to market effectively, we have to have compelling and concise language. Going beyond that, people aren't going to read the third page. So whatever you've communicated in those first two, it better be enough to get you in the door.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. Now, you said something that I do want to get some clarification on. You mentioned CV, and we're talking about resume. And a lot of times people will use those two terms interchangeably, but they're not the same thing, are they?
No, they certainly are not. So a CV has a different order of information that you would be formatting. And again, it's very particular to certain industries. So anytime someone is looking for a position within a university or some type of academic setting, they tend to be looking for the CV because it's going to contain much more detail in terms of any research, publications, and presentations that they have offered. That type of field is looking for that in-depth knowledge about the individual and where they've found success. Because similar to academia, also in the healthcare world, if you are a physician, they also want to know that you have kept up to date and are currently published and are staying on top of the research relevant to your field. Conversely, a resume is, again, that marketing tool that we're going to use for nearly every other field, is considered much more concise and is definitely held to those two, maximum 3 pages, because you're not looking at a long run-on list of different research pieces or publications, but rather you can consolidate that and just include it on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, and was one of the things that I've gotten in trouble with, because people will say to me, go ahead and send me your CV, and I'll send them that, and I have my presentations and where I've presented and, my publications and all those things, and they're like, well, you don't have your job history. I said, well, you didn't ask for that. and it really makes me look dumb, because I'm like, sending something, and sometimes I haven't gotten a call back, and I'm wondering, did I send them the wrong thing? Are they asking? So that was like a really weird thing, so I'm glad we cleared that up. So Kris, I know specifically we're going to talk about the 3 things that the modern resume must have. So, if we think about that from that standpoint, what's the first thing that is really important to have on our modern resume?
So this actually relates to the conversation you were having with a C-suite colleague. It's position-specific language. Nowadays, your resume is going to pass through a series of different automated filters. ATS, they're called applicant tracking software systems. So these ATS systems essentially serve as the gatekeeper you must pass through in order to get to a hiring agent on the other side. Because if we think about the sheer volume of individuals across the globe that are applying to any given position that is posted on Indeed or even the company's website, it's too much even for a Fortune 50 HR department to handle. So they pass these documents through these HR filters, applicant tracking software, and those filters are specifically looking for keywords. So we need to make sure that you've incorporated these type of words that are relevant to your industry and your position to help ensure that your electronic document is going to make it onto someone's desk. Along with that, it's really important to highlight your key skill set as it relates to this target area that you're headed toward, because potential employers are much more in tune with experience and accomplishments that really demonstrate a clear return on investment in that targeted field of a particular industry, which may have been what you were referencing earlier, where I don't want to hear about your success as it relates to a completely different industry, but I can hear about the success as it is transferable into this new space that you're attempting to step into. Put it very easily, individuals, again, they're looking for that specific skill set as opposed to being impressed that maybe you're good at sales and finance and furniture design. As the old saying goes, a jack of all trades is an expert of none.
Right. And I really want to learn that furniture stuff. So now when we think about those keywords, and I know that this is just the first point here. So how is that set up? Are we setting up those keywords based on experience? Are we setting those keywords based on? I guess that's where someone like you come in to say, okay, this is the career field you're in. We want to be able to position you using these. It's almost like a search engine optimization format.
That is an excellent analogy. That's absolutely what it is. And there are several ways that individuals can access the keywords that are going to be relevant to their field. Some organic, some a little bit more electronic, and you can rely on some the World Wide Web to help out with that. So the simplest way, again, relying upon all of our amazing technology, would be for you to grab 2 or 3 job postings. Let's say you go online to a specific field, you grab 2 or 3 job postings that have a similar job title that you're really interested in, copy and paste all of the text of those particular descriptions into one of these word gathering websites. So Wordle, which is WORDLE.net. and tagcrowd, tagcrowd.com. These are both sites that essentially create taggles. They create word clouds based upon the content that is fed. So if you were to dump 3 different job descriptions all meshed together into one of these sites, it's going to process and send you the keywords, meaning the words that it saw most frequently used across those job descriptions. These are commonly going to be the keywords that are relevant to your industry. Another great way to look at that is take a look if you're remaining in a similar field than you've been in the past. Take a look at your last performance evaluation. Look at the metrics that the company is holding you responsible for. If you are in marketing or sales, for example, I have to assume that you are held accountable for customer retention rates, and that probably vendor management may be important to you. Perhaps it's client relations, sales marketing, lead generation, revenue growth. All of these things are relevant to that particular field. So when you just take a look at your daily life, the type of terms that are typically used in your industry to describe success, those are keywords that should fall on your resume.
How awesome. How awesome is that? So the second thing that needs to be on the modern resume, what do you give us?
Results-oriented detail. So my goodness, this is the biggest shift we've seen in the last 5 years, let alone the last 10, around how our resumes have changed from just being this listing that lets people know stuff we were, quote, responsible for, versus things that we have accomplished, achievements we have made in our space to add to the bottom line of the organization. So your resume needs to be a snapshot of your greatest career accomplishments rather than that laundry list of job duties. So describing your achievements in a manner that really makes it easy for a potential employment to understand your return on investment. We do so by really kind of diving into those responsibilities that we have and understanding how to add quantifiable detail. So rather than saying one of my responsibilities, let's say I was a customer service representative, is to answer phone calls, solve issues. Okay, well, that must be on your job description, I would imagine. But when I, as a resume writer, want to turn that into an accomplishment, I want to start to understand the hows. How much, how many, how long, how often. So if you answer calls, how many calls are you answering a day? Because if you tell me that you answer 10 calls, that is very different than answering 100. If you tell me you answer calls from your highest, key clientele, that's very different from answering calls from every member that calls in. If you tell me that you resolve issues on your own and that you do so within or perhaps even beating the turnaround time that is expected, that is very different than telling me you handle one issue a day and then you pass it along to your supervisor. So getting down into those specifics in your accomplishments allows the reader of the document to clearly understand how your skill set and your bottom line impact is going to translate in their world. Same thing if you mentioned that you oversee a budget of $5 million. That is very different than P&L management of $100,000. Giving that quantifiable detail not only showcases your accomplishments, but also helps someone understand how that would translate, what that looks like in the new world.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm just scratching stuff off my resume as we're talking about it. I mean, it's just, it almost looks like a comic book now. I don't know that I should have had you on the show. No, you're giving us some great information, Kris. And that was one of the things, too, is we've started to see that, as you've said, as I was looking through resumes, helping one of my clients prepare to hire, we're seeing a lot of more bullet points to say increase productivity 22%, saved, lean daily management, increase, whatever it was. And it really kind of gives you that, that thought of when this guy comes in, I want to know exactly how he did this. So I think you're making a great point here. And what about number 3? What's the last thing that needs to be on a modern resume?
So this is definitely a very modern concept, eye-catching presentation. One more time, your resume is a marketing tool and you need to use it as such. We've all heard the research that shows on average, recruiters take less than 7 seconds to glance at a resume. And quite frankly, Kris, you're lucky if you get 7 seconds. So you want to create visual interest, and we do so with consistent formatting and good use of white space to really catch the reader's eye, make sure that we're leading them through the document so that they want to continue reading past those initial lines. Again, we use white space. We want to make sure we have a clear header, a really powerful executive summary that clearly showcases the direction that we're trying to go in, and help to tell your story so that the reader can understand, once again, how you're going to move from your current phase of success into their department of success.
And I think that that's really, an incredible thing. That piece of paper that's coming across their desktop or nowadays across their computer screen really needs to be something that's going to catch their eye to say, I need to learn more about this person. So Kris, when we think about this, I'm going to be in the process, and I'm using this as a hypothetical, I'm going to be in the process now to start a job search. How long should it be? I mean, how long should I wait before I'm leaving a position to have my resume updated? And then how long does it take once you get it?
Okay, so I believe, as I mentioned earlier, that everyone should have an updated resume on hand. So I think you should wait 0 days if you're even contemplating heading into the marketplace. Or again, you just want to make sure that you're continuing to network effectively, because obviously some content from the resume can lead into a powerful LinkedIn profile and all elements of your brand. So I think that every individual should work to have modern and updated branding materials at their disposal at any time. Once you begin the process, depending on how long you choose to spend on your resume, whether you're going to invest in a professional support or you're going to take the do-it-yourself approach, once you have that resume in hand, and if you're starting down the job search road, we've also all heard that research shows us in general, which is a very, it's on average, for every $10,000 a year that you make, you should expect at least a month as part of your job search. So if I make $10,000 a year, I can expect to be on the job market for at least a month. Conversely, if I make $300,000 a year, I can expect that it's going to take some time, possibly over a year, for me to find placement back at that same level of value. But there are so many things job seekers can do to accelerate that path. Again, having a very clear understanding of what your target is, having clear branding materials, really implementing and pursuing, executing a great networking strategy that's helping you get in touch with some key decision makers, as opposed to sitting at home on the couch just clicking submit over and over and over again to those online job postings. So lots of things you can do to create some variability in that timeline. But in general, job seekers can certainly expect, depending on your salary range, anywhere between 3 to 6 months to find their next placement.
And what about when I engage with you and I send you my resume, for you to do your magic and get that thing back to me? I mean, should I get that to you? Is that going to take a month? I mean, how long does that take for you to, really kind of break that down and put something back together?
Absolutely. So I came from a project management background, Kris, which means that I don't like to mess around and I have timelines and workflows for everything. And so when clients initially engage with me, we set up an intake session, and that's a 1-hour meeting where we're going to talk through all of the depth of your career history, your education, your accomplishments, your goals, what you ate for breakfast, the whole 9 yards. And after that 1-hour phone session, I then begin to work my magic, and you have a draft in hand within 10 days. You then have the opportunity for questions and feedback, and then clients receive their final document within 14 days. So it's a 2-week turnaround.
I got to tell you, I think that's really awesome. And Kris, you've really given us a lot of things to talk about. And I got to tell you, as we're getting up there in time, I want to be respectful of your time, but you're going to have to promise that you're going to come back and share more of your experience and expertise with us.
I would love to. Can I give your listeners one more tip?
Oh, of course, yes.
Very simple. You could change your resume. You could modernize your resume literally in under 10 seconds. Stop using Times New Roman font. So when we talk about visual appeal, Times New Roman is considered an outdated font. Individuals that present resumes with that, it makes the reader assume that this must be a document you probably created when you graduated from college and have just been adding on to ever since, as opposed to having a fresh brand. So one of the best things that we can do is just go ahead and update to any other universal font. Arial, Garamond, Bookman and Teak. Just run in there, select all, change the font style, and right there you're going to have a document that looks more modern than what you had a moment before. I'm
going to have to change mine because I'm in Chalk Duster. So maybe that's the problem that I've. So Kris,
don't choose Comic Sans.
Okay. That's one of my favorite ones for my email. But so if folks want to engage with you, I'm sure we've kind of piqued the interest of a lot of the people who are out there, Kris. You've given us a lot of great information. If folks want to engage with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Thank you for asking. So the best thing folks can do is just head over to my website. That's at www.professionalcourage.com. Individuals can take a look at some of the services that I offer, get a better sense for my style and background, and right on that homepage, they can click to schedule a complimentary resume consultation. Happy to sit down, have a half-hour conversation over the phone with individuals, walking through their current document, providing them with some real-time feedback, and then certainly sharing any information as it relates to my process, services, fees, as desired. So go ahead and check out the website, or if folks think that it might be something they want to do in the future, they're not ready for that consultation, I'm always open to accepting LinkedIn invitations. And my LinkedIn is linkedin.com/in/professional courage.
And I got to tell you, Kris, you were amazing, and I look forward to chatting with you again. And everybody out there, I want to thank you for joining us once again on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast, and I look forward to chatting with everyone again real soon.
Thank you for joining us. The Ultimate Leadership Podcast is a production of KrisCeballero.com. You can interact with us by email at ultimateleadership16@gmail.com. All rights reserved.